Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dynasty Gambit, part of the Going for Two Live network. I'm your host, Kyle Senra. Joining me are my co-hosts, Devin and Brian. How are you all doing?
Doing good. How about you, Kyle? It's always nice to get with you too and kind of get a break from what I would call day-to-day normal life. Unfortunately, my 88 or 89-year-old aunt fell last night in assisted living and bumped her head, and I had to break the news to my mom. She's right now in a coma, so I just like a break from normal.
Yeah, well, we're hoping to help you with that, Brian, and hoping everything for the best of your family. So anything we can do to help you feel better, appreciate it. I'm sure there's lots of people also going through things that maybe we can help with. So on the grander thing, we obviously want to help with dynasty advice too, but glad that you feel so kind to share your time with us and that it feels so well for you as well.
Well, thanks for having me on, most importantly. So.
So we're going to talk about dynasty sells today. And I think I would say that we're not necessarily going to do dynasty buys right away. I think this is the time of year where you want to be selling more. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But first, a quick couple of housekeeping things. So as always, we're part of the Going for Two Live network on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. And I said Twitter. I meant YouTube. The Twitter video, it does exist, though. So that isn't inaccurate. That is accurate, but we can't see the comments. But if you'd like to chat and interact with us, then head over to those other pages. Again, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, the Going for Two Live pages on all those sites. And you can come in here and ask your own questions or maybe share some of your own sells if someone wants to share their own opinions. So everything welcome there. And as always, check out goingfor2.com, source for all sorts of great dynasty, redraft, fantasy football, DFS content, and I'll give my own little plug and shout out selfishly, and not so selfishly. I love the sport. I want to promote the sport. The CFL kicking off, actually, I think basically right now. I wonder if all the CFL fans won't tune into us, unfortunately. But if you are, and you are delaying the start of the Montreal-Calgary game, at least you're watching of it, then appreciate that. But I just put out a DFS article, and I'm going to be doing that every week of the CFL season on goingfor2.com. So just showing that we're covering all sorts of sports. That's why I'm kind of wearing the Canada shirt, the CNBBCL. It's a best ball tournament done last year. It's actually been done a few years, just comprised entirely of Canadians. And all of this gear can be found at goingfor2.com/store or veridianglobal.com, part of the goingfor2.com collection. Yeah, now that that's all out of the way, Devin, just start with you. This was your idea, your inspiration for the Dynasty Sells. You suggested it. I do agree that it is really good timing, but what was your thought process? Do you have like a just general Dynasty Sell philosophy?
This is like you said it a little bit earlier that this is kind of the best time to be doing some of your sells. So I've been actively working a lot of my trades in my different leagues and everything. And I've seen a lot of similar players that are constantly either being traded or being offered in trades. So I just figured, hey, maybe we could talk about it, shed some light, and maybe help out some people get their teams prepped right before the season starts here. So this is usually my biggest time. I love trading, and then this is the time right now where it's after the draft. You're kind of looking over all your roster, seeing where you need to improve. So it's a really good time to pull the trigger on some of those moves.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I mean, after the draft, most of the leagues are so deep. You're not, most dynasty leagues are so deep. You're not looking at really waiver wire moves that are going to help you. So it's more of a trading season, and I totally agree. There's certainly right after the draft, it opens up that window for trading, and that's primarily the best way to improve your roster if you see a need. And I'll be honest, last year was my first year in it, so feel free to ask any of his questions. I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm still learning myself. So
I don't ever call myself an expert either, but I like to give as much advice all the time. So
I'll call myself an expert now. That'd be really arrogant of me, wouldn't it? No, I think, I think, not to qualify, you have to be qualified to podcast, but I think, we're trying these things in our leagues and we're trying through experience, however, 1 year experience or Actually, I don't know how long you've been playing Dynasty for, Devin. I've been
about 20.
This will be year 8 for me, to be honest. So
it's 2017 for me, so it'll be year 5.
Year 6.
Oh yeah, because I guess I was just doing 7 plus 5 to 22. But yeah, it'll be year 6. Yeah.
Math is fine.
And the other thing I want to shout out real quick is the other thing to keep in mind. Each league, I think I've lost count, but I want to say I'm in 6 or 7 leagues. Each league, it's important to try to get to know your trade partners, your other members of the league, because it varies from league to league. It's like one league is like, well, that's like great trade I just made. And the other league, who knows? They might not like it at all. So just got to kind of know your league mates.
Each league has its own ecosystem.
Yeah, one of the biggest advantages you can do is, some people either go strictly by calculators, but some also just, like to see kind of where it falls on a calculator. But if you know the calculator that your opponent or team or person in your league is using, that's a huge advantage, So I know for a fact in my home league, some of them use the Dynasty football calculator. So whenever I'm trying to target a player from them, I kind of see what they're worth first because I know they're probably going to punch it into that calculator. So if you do know that, just use that to your advantage. It's a huge advantage if you know exactly which one they're going to use and counter you with and all that type of good stuff.
And the other thing, for an example, I know Devin's a Bears fan. I know Kyle's a Packers fan. I don't know if they have personal favorites in regards to obtaining those type of players, but you'll have people across your league that may be such a homer that you might get even a better price than you think. So keep that in mind too.
Oh, yeah, especially in newer leagues. I've tried to shy away from my Bears homerism as much as possible in my football leagues. Traded for Trubisky a lot right when I first started and all that type of good stuff. And, it worked out a little bit, but not really. So I've tried to shy away from that myself, but it is hard. If someone offered me Komet right now, I'm probably going to try to pull the trigger to get him. So.
Sorry, I just moved the screen because I always feel bad that the Dynasty Gambit logo hides half of Devin's face. But yeah, I figured out how to move the screens over. Finally figured that out. But I guess back to what I had said earlier, I'll finally kind of elaborate on that point. I think if you're making player for player trades, I think there's no because the risk is all with any individual player, right? Like any one single player could get injured at any point. Cam Akers proved last year doesn't even have to be a part of any practice or any training camp or anything. Although you see that it seems like there's one every year, even just in training camp.
Yeah.
Right? And so all the risk is with a player, something happening to the player. So this is the time of year to sell in the sense that sell players straight for picks. If it's player for player trades or it's packages of players and there's picks on both sides, then it's okay. The amount of overall risk is probably close to the same. Then it comes to the individual player risk. Obviously, some players might be riskier than others, but then that's part of the trade calculation. But draft picks carry no real risk and maybe no real ceiling. Like it's tough to think that many rookie picks in any given year are going to be like you're not going to have 12 rookie picks in the first round of a startup, for instance. You might get one in the first round of a startup if you're lucky. I guess like the 2021 season, last offseason, you might have saw the quarterbacks. You might have gotten 3, like Lance, Fields, Lawrence. That was probably common to see those guys in the first round of a startup. Maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire that first year. Probably not Burrow though. So even then, so anyway. The idea is that the value of the picks maybe doesn't have the highest ceiling, but certainly the highest floor. The rookie 210, whatever the end of pick that ends up being, can't tear its own ACL. There's not a way that pick is going to just drastically lose value because of one incident. Maybe you say, oh, this whole class is bad, like the 2022 class we're just living through right now. Let's talk about how bad that class is. But outside of that, there's no way for one pick to just drastically lose value. So this is the perfect time of year to be selling players strictly for picks. And the idea is you can do this. Most people, okay, if I'm a rebuilding team, that seems like a natural thing to do. Even contenders can do this, though. You take whatever's not the core of the team and any really productive players that you can trade for enough picks, and the time to buy players will be in season. And that's more just knowledge. Who has survived through training camp and hasn't gotten hurt, who actually is producing points and how many points. And that can be also the level of what kind of production are you buying. Really tough. We can guess that. And that's kind of what we do. And that's why we do fantasy football year round, is because we're trying to predict and guess. but we're going to have a lot more information for that in season. So that's the best time to buy players. So if we do a Dynasty Gambit buy show, that'll probably be like August, like closer to the season. I think would be the ideal time to do that. With that in mind, is that we'll have more knowledge, and that's the time when, okay, if you've sold throughout the offseason, you've gotten these excess picks, that's when you can use it. And even August might be a little early for that. That's maybe when you do your really big selling is when you know you've made the playoffs and, okay, this is a team that can compete and can win. Now I'm going to go all in and sell all the picks, or closer to that. And I mean, sometimes it's you make that trade week 4 too. There's times to do it, but again, closer to the season, more information. So good time to talk dynasty sells. And I guess I bought a lot of time there, so I'll sell it back to you. But Devin, again, your concept, your idea, do you want to give us a start here?
Yeah, sure. So I have a couple listed here. I think we can all probably maybe just do one, talk about that. But if we want to extend the certain position, we can do so. So my first one, I'm going to base this off of assuming we're doing super flex here. So it really doesn't change a whole lot, but it does make your quarterbacks more valuable. So mine is Tua. I think he's a huge sell right now, just because I think the writing on the wall is pretty clear. We've actually talked about it on the Dynasty Gambit as well, that they're going all in on Tua this season. So it truly is a make or break season for him. They've surrounded him with weapons. Everything's there. There's not any excuses, maybe besides the offensive line still isn't that great. But if he fails, who knows where he's looking at next year. They have multiple first-round picks. They can easily, trade up if they don't finish real bad to where they get snagged, Stroud or someone like that in next year's draft. So right now it's, a lot of people are still high on him because you can sell with the advantage that, okay, they just traded for Tyreek. There's a lot of allure still around him. He has good weapons around him, but I would just hedge your bets that if you're not sold on Tua long-term, then right now you can still get a really good haul for him. And it's probably a great time to try to move on from him.
And yeah, it's funny because my quarterback will also be kind of close to that same thing, that a young player, and it's you're talking about the fear they could he could be drafted over. He could. I mean, it seems like they've been trying to trade for veterans, so that could still be a possibility as well. I mean, it seems like a lot of talk, like let's say Minnesota and Kirk Cousins, they decide to part ways. I think Miami doesn't look at how efficient Kirk Cousins has been and thought, can we win better with him than Tua? I don't think that's outrageous to think. Even with the advanced age, they might just go all in and get Cousins like that. That's just one possibility. I suppose, Devin, the idea of make or break season for Tua, you're selling on the chance of it breaking. Now, what if he makes it? Now, what does that look like fantasy wise? And what kind of do we think he's really? Is he going to elevate to like where Burrow did last year, where now Burrow might be going as a top 5, top 6 startup pick? I don't know that Tua's ever going to quite get to that in 1 year. He'd have to be like Lamar Jackson, that leap where he won the MVP and he had 9% touchdown rate. That would be like the real key stat, is if Tua can, throw an 8 or 9% touchdown rate season, even regardless of the volume, which probably still going to be high enough. That's good. That'll do it. But then I guess if he does that well of a season, Miami would have no choice but to commit, right? And if they commit, it makes it then. So there's probably still some risk but that type of season where he's throwing 40 touchdowns seems, I don't know. Brian, what do you think? Do you think there's a big chance of that?
Can you repeat the question? Part of it was kind of in and out.
Yeah, I ramble a lot too. That's my bad. So like I just said a random number, 40 touchdowns for Tua. Do you think how realistic do you think that is?
I mean, obviously he's got a better receiving core than he did last year, adding Tyreek in. I still don't think that's realistic. But that's just me. I mean, it certainly could happen, but I just don't see it for him. I've never been, even when he was in Alabama with his arm, I never was that impressed. So.
Yeah, 3.8 and 4.1% touchdown rates, and neither of those are full seasons. Like he's started 9 games the 1 year and then 12 the next year. So never full seasons. So we've also never seen like how many attempts he will throw or can throw over the course of a season either. But it'd have to be quite the leap.
I will say, I mean, he's one where I truly see both sides of the coin. Right now, I think you can really capitalize on the value if you're not sold on him. I'm personally not sold on him still. But, he does have the weapons there. He does have a brand new coach, the Shanahan system. So, it's very quarterback friendly system in general. So, I mean, I can see both sides of the coin, but I kind of feel like Miami is almost barreling towards another Tannehill situation where, like, they're not completely sold, but he's going to put up a good enough year to where they really don't want to move on. But how long are they truly committed to him? Maybe a year or two. I think he'll have the 5th-year option to where they could ride it out another year. But it's just, to me, he's going to have to take a very big leap for them to truly believe that he's the guy for multiple years. So I think maybe a worst-case scenario, you make it to the 5th year with him. But then you might, like I said, be looking almost at like a Tannehill where he's kind of a lame duck quarterback for a year. Then might be a backup somewhere else. So just really depends on your own opinions on him and opinions on what they've put around him, everything like that. But for me, that's why he came up on my sell list.
I even threw in Tyreek Hill. Since we're talking about Tua, I used him as a sell in a trade this year. So
me too.
He's a little older. I forget the exact package, but I got back Deontay, and of course I'm a Steelers fan, and I'm wearing my Deontay Homer jersey. But still, I know that the quarterback issues are unsettled at Pittsburgh, but I went with Deontay over Tyreek. So
that is hilarious, Brian, because I remember my Tyreek trade because it was pretty simple. It was Tyreek and a third for Stephon Diggs. But what's funny about it is that manager, maybe a few months before, or maybe about a month before, and I remember this, and this was a purposeful trade back, offered me the trade of Deontay Johnson and a third to buy Diggs off them. I didn't really want to do that. Like, upgrading from Deontay to Diggs, I'd be into that, but I don't know. I feel like there's value there, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, but I sat on that, and then I was trying to sell Hill in another trade, and then it just clicked. Wait, why don't I just sell Hill to run over there to that guy and sell Hill, knowing that he wanted to sell Diggs and was willing to go do a wide receiver swap where he got the better value. So I thought, and I value Deontay over Hill. I don't know if it seems like you do. Obviously you do too, Brian, and Devin. I don't know if you'd agree on that.
I would. Yep.
So I don't know where his their market values are. They're probably pretty close though. So if they're pretty close, if we're all kind of saying, we think Deontay will outproduce Tyreek, then that's kind of the definition of sell, right? It's where the production value won't quite meet the market value. And I think there's leverage to be gained to do that before the season. And then when that market value will drop, maybe there's a chance to buy these players back too.
I think the other piece in that was running back for running back. I went Tony Pollard over Kareem Hunt. So I think I went Pollard and Johnson for Hunt and Tyreek. So
I probably prefer Hunt to Pollard, but then that kind of evens out in that I prefer Deontay to Tyreek. So it seems like a fair deal. It probably all I'd imagine, even just looking back at my rankings, like Pollard and Hunt are probably pretty close.
They're very close. And I once again, my team last year made the semifinal or made the final actually, but it's not a perfect team. So I went younger in both pieces too. So I didn't mind that at all.
True. Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about the age for it, but yeah, that is significant. So it helps with the overall, I was going to say versatility, but yeah, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. It's like both options are open to you. You could just, Deontay's still a win now piece, even if he's younger, but it's good. He's a good piece on a contender or a rebuild. But yeah, I guess back to Tua, I guess, Devin, one scenario that's almost in the middle is where he has a make it season by Miami standards. He gets them to the playoffs, maybe even wins a playoff game. And he is capable of getting us there. Even in a division with Josh Allen and Bill Belichick, he was able to compete and get a wild card spot. And maybe if they lose a playoff game, but it's close, that shows something to where, okay, we're committed, but he might still be, fantasy QB 15 at best, right? I think, which is where kind of he's valued now, even though I think the fantasy results are probably lower. He struggles he may not always be a top 20 quarterback every week. So if the production isn't really upping, but the wins get there, then I don't know. I guess the fantasy manager is savvy fantasy managers won't necessarily be affected by a longer commitment. Okay, don't really care if he's on the Dolphins. If anything, that might hurt his value. Would have rather him go somewhere else with a better offensive line, like you referenced to, Devin.
Right.
maybe almost hoping that Tua leaves and goes to a better offense that can protect him better. Now he's got the weapons, so maybe now, like before, we definitely would say that I'll give him better weapons. Now he has that, and they have made improvements to the offensive line, so maybe that potential might be diminished a little bit. There might actually be worse situations he could leave to.
Yeah.
Whereas before, probably not too many worse.
Yeah, and I mean, if he's putting up QB 15 numbers too, just depending on your own roster makeup. I mean, if he's your QB2 and he's giving you high end QB2 numbers, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, QB 15 would be the third best QB2 out there. So, so I mean, it really just depends on roster makeup too. If I was going into this season and he's my locked in number one quarterback, that's what would kind of give me pause. I would, either try to look to reset my clock with maybe trading for like Pickett in a piece or something, or like, someone a little like another year younger or something like that, if you can make that swing. But that's just the one thing I would just try to think about. I just, like I said, it's all personal preference, but if he's my QB1, I don't feel great going into this season knowing that pretty much there's a bunch of forks in the road of how it could go. And, it could go bad, could go good. So, yeah.
I like the idea of, if you've got a risky player, sell them for an even riskier player, but like the risk on both is like this player's even riskier, but yet like it's both bad. Like it's both bad. So you get something extra with that other secondary, more risky player. Like one I keep thinking of is Tua to Davis Mills.
Yeah.
And is Davis Mills viewed as a riskier proposition than Tua because he doesn't have the draft capital? He wasn't the big prospect everyone thought coming out of college. Like the anticipation he was going to be the 101 that next season, even just going into his final year because of everything he had done. So is that one where their outlooks probably aren't that much different, where they're playing well enough, but their teams could replace them. So is that something where like you're getting extra on top of Mills and that extra makes it worth it? And even if Mills doesn't outproduce Tua, but is close, like, I mean, and the one thing with the rankings to the points per game, I mean, last year I said QB 15 because I remember last year, Kirk Cousins, I think, was the line. He was either QB 13 or 14. And then if you look at points per game, it dropped like 3 points per game to the next player. So like if Tua is 15 and he's the third best QB2, but it's the significant drop to where there's no real difference between QB 15 and QB 23. There's only maybe 3 points per game separating that entire group instead of 3 behind the next guy up. If he's in that same range, which probably where Davis Mills is going to be, then it doesn't really matter which one you have. And the extra is simply that's all extra on top, and that's what makes it all worth it. So I think it's not just the rankings, it's more the points per game too. So all to say that I like your call of Tua as a sell, Devin.
Well, thanks. And what about let's hear one of your guys's.
Well, I know Brian already gave Tyreek Hill. So are there any other Dolphin sells, or are we done with that team?
I mean, you could make a case for Gesicki too. I didn't really write him down or have anything really prepared for him, but I mean, he is on a franchise tag. You don't know what his situation is going to be in the future. Could go better, could go worse. So, I mean, he's one, especially now with Tyreek there too. He had a pretty solid year last year. I don't remember exactly where he finished amongst tight ends, but I would imagine he's not going to replicate that now with some diminished targets with Tyreek there.
And you said the word targets because I remember he had 112, and I remember looking this up. Waddle was at 140, Gesicki 112, and then the next player was at like 70.
Yeah.
And
so he's probably going down to that 80, 70 range. Somewhere
exactly. Maybe 90 at best is what he could hope for. And It's either going to be Waddle's going to maintain what he had, or he's going to be Gesicki's role and Tyreek comes in and steals it from him. And I don't really see the scenario much where Gesicki is the number 2 guy there. Like that's, outside of injury, of course, but it's not a great individual season, but I think the one thing with him is I almost think that entire range of tight ends could be a sell. Like Goddard's right there too. Sure. Even Hawkinson. Like, so maybe that'd be my first sell is because I hate tight ends and I just want to get them out of the way. That entire tight end range, starting from, I guess Waller's the linchpin. Waller, I think, unlike Gesicki, I think I see the scenario where Waller could be the number 2. I think Adams, they hate Adams and how good he is. Like, I don't think he's going to see a diminish in targets. He had 169 last year. The way Carr peppers top targets, I could actually see him getting that with the Raiders. I don't know if double-digit touchdowns is that's the thing that I think Adams could suffer with. But that aside, we're not talking Adams. We're not even really talking Waller. But the idea is I could see Waller still being that number 2 and it being Renfrow that suffers. But there's maybe the scenario where Renfrow maintains his number 2 and Waller suffers. So that one I think is less clear if that's a clear sell. He might almost be a buy if people are down on Waller after the Adams trade. But I think everyone after Waller is, and I always say Kyle Pitts is a sell, but I think Hawkinson, Goddard, and like you said, Gesicki, I think that entire range is worthy of selling. Schultz is in there too. I don't know if Dawson Knox, I think he might still be in that range too in terms of like the market value on him. Noah Fant still, you can go into Seattle. Albert Okwuegbunam, like that entire range to me probably isn't much different than the next quote unquote tier at tight end. So I guess Pratt Freiermuth, he's another one of the guys that's up there where he might almost be my favorite out of that group, him and Schultz. So I don't know, I would maybe exclude those two. So if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Hawkinson because it seems like his value is still quite up there. And I don't know, he's shown flashes. He's definitely shown a ceiling. He's been the tight end 1 a few times in his career on a weekly basis. But then it seems like if he's not scoring the touchdown, if he's not the guy that's exploiting the matchup, that is the go-to guy in a single game, he's not really doing much and almost can't work as the secondary role. He's either it's all or nothing, and there isn't really been too many big all games. It's always early in the season too, never in the playoffs when you really need him. But that's more anecdotal. So yeah, so I think I'd go with Hawkinson as my sell. And now I don't have to talk about tight ends for the rest of the episode. But Brian, I know you already mentioned Tyreek Hill, but did you want to mention a different sell? Like, did you have a quarterback sell? I guess we could stick with that position.
Nope, I think he might be frozen.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can try and get back in.
In the meantime, I'll throw another one that is real similar to it. Maybe we can just kind of build off of that. Would be Jalen Hurts. I think it's, I see both sides of the coin. I'm not completely sold. He was actually the one I was thinking of when I originally was putting this down. I've been offered him a handful of times in different leagues, and I think his situation is very, very similar to Tua's, where the team went out and got that alpha receiver. They got multiple picks for next year. They're loaded up if they actually need to make that move. So I like Hurts a lot more than Tua. I want to put that out there. But it was just a real quick, Brian, why you fell off. I threw that one out there just because him and Tua are such a similar situation where this is almost a make it or break it year for him. So I'll let you go ahead with your guys, but if you guys want to keep talking about Hurts too, we can.
No, I agree with you. I heard the part that you like Hurts better than Tua. I totally agree. I would definitely be on the Hurts side. One thing, I don't know. It kind of depends on how y'all feel about the second-year quarterbacks. I mean, because of their age, you've almost got to keep them. But at the same time, like I was somewhat surprised today. I was looking at a trade chart, and Mac Jones is currently on that particular chart was QB 15. I'm not sure. I mean, they've not really improved their weapons in the offseason, if you want to call them weapons to begin with. And then I don't know. I personally have a hard time.
I like Devontae Parker, but
he seems like he's at the top of his value that he'll probably be at. To me, I mean, he's not. He had a good rookie season, but I don't know. I don't love his overall talent personally.
Well, he's limited based off. He's not going to get you a lot of rushing yards. A lot of the top 10 guys are at least going to give you some kind of rushing production. And there's really minimal there that he's going to give you there. So it already he's like another Joe Burrow almost, where obviously Joe Burrow's better, but that rushing upside being capped a little bit just is what's going to prevent him from being that true QB1 in most leagues.
Because I mean, like even Tua, like he's not a big runner, but he'll still be probably. I'm gonna look up Mac Jones in a sec, but yeah, Tua's rushed for 109 yards, 128 yards in back-to-back seasons. I don't think Mac Jones is even there. And like we would not call Tua a mobile quarterback. So like, yeah, Matt Jones is really a definition of a statue.
Definitely. Right. Probably would have been.
He actually surpassed him, but he also did this in 17 games. He had 129 rushing yards.
Oh, see. So he's right there. So you're looking at,
yeah, if Tua played a whole season, he would have probably definitely eclipsed that.
Yeah, that's, but yeah, I mean, Mac Jones would have been elite, if this was 10 years ago, where he's just, no one else was really running like this. And Mike Vick was really the only one kind of doing this type of stuff. But in today's game, he's capped on his actual ceiling that he's going to be able to reach.
So you guys are timing this so perfectly because I've got comments to make about both of the names said. So while we're talking about rushing quarterbacks, we'll finish off the Jalen Hurts discussion because I actually disagree, and I actually view him more as a buy, thinking that he's already done what Tua hasn't done. He's made the playoffs. Sure. And it seems like that team's gotten better. And yeah, maybe if he flops, they don't make the playoffs. They do have the ammunition to move on. I also don't think there's very many quarterbacks that don't have that. And I think his potential of being top 5 is definitely present. Now,
yeah,
we all prefer Hurts over Tua. I don't think there's anyone that would rank Tua ahead of Hurts in Dynasty. Maybe someone who's really a Hurts hater, which is crazy to think that Tua did replace Hurts at Alabama, right?
Right.
So I guess it's just kind of funny we do start with those two at quarterback, but I think, everyone could see what Hurts produced last year, and certainly in redraft he'll be a lot higher, which is in enough going to raise his dynasty value. But I really think he's on the precipice of, if he does make the playoffs again, and if they take this next step and even win a playoff game, he's going to get signed long-term. And even if the arm talent isn't there because of the rushing yards, he can kind of maintain that fantasy floor. And just specifically on that team with a pretty decent offensive line, how many rushing touchdowns he could possibly get.
Yeah.
He and Boston Scott, a crazy amount of rushing touchdowns just between the two of them. He might split that with Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell or Sanders. He could split that with other running backs, but the touchdown potential on the ground with that offense seems like it's great. Even if, let's say, they curtail back Jalen Hurts rushing a lot and, allow him to pass more, then maybe that helps his overall efficiency, but then still being able to run near the goal line and get those rushing touchdowns will really help his ceiling as well. So, however you look at it, like high floor, high ceiling. So I'm kind of more in on the buying Jalen Hurts. I just did a startup that I think started last week. I think we started Monday, or was it the week before? I can't remember. Maybe we're 2 weeks in. But I started Hurt. Yeah, I think I ran Hurts in the third round. It's a two QB, 2 tight end league. So I went Herbert, Kittle, Hurts, and part of me, I could have gone Dak, but I really wanted Kittle. Is that tier break?
Right.
Yeah, I love Kittle. Everyone knows how much I love Kittle. Tight end 1 in Dynasty for me. And so my thinking was there were enough quarterbacks that I didn't mind getting Hurts. I kind of mapped it out, whereas, okay, I'm either going to get Hurts or Fields. Prefer Hurts, but I was okay with getting either of those two, knowing I had Justin Herbert. So I love that combination. You can get Hurts as your QB too.
Oh, for sure.
Especially if you've got that early first and you want that second elite quarterback. This league was kind of weird because of the scoring. He might not fall to the end of the second in every draft. He might go early second, but he might be a trade up candidate if you don't. I've seen startups where people are, they're picking 104 and they trade for the 105 and they take 2 elite quarterbacks. Maybe it's a cheaper version of that take one in the first and then trade up to get the early second. Hurts might be a good candidate for that to pair as a QB2, and then you've got him as the potential. And if the risk does go there, he's your QB2. There's not as much risk associated, but at the ceiling of if he's your QB2, the production you have, you can smash people at the quarterback positions most week. They're having to beat you at the other positions, and you can really make up those differences probably a lot more easily. So, and I think it's a little scarier Hurts QB1 though, which is it's a lot easier to get Tua as your QB2. It's trickier to maybe get Hurts as the QB2. It's possible. Right. I just showed it clearly. I just did it in a league without even trading actually. So it's maybe not that expensive to do cost prohibitive wide to trade for it either. So I think it's maybe the ideal target, but I'm not too scared to have him as my QB1. If that's what it came down to, I'm at the end of the first and, Russell Wilson's gone and all that, the top 6 or 7 guys are all gone. I think I probably trust Hurts more than, as you mentioned, Brian, those second-year players, which I don't know if there's any pushback on Hurts, but that kind of gets to my quarterback sell and a second-year quarterback, to be honest.
I'll have to admit, when I dropped out, I missed the part. It sounds like now that Devin has Hurts more as a sell, and Kyle, you have it more as a buy. I would be leaning more towards a buy than a sell personally, and okay, I'm either on the hold or buy in Devin. I don't sell him right now because
the only reason I brought him up was just because of how similar the situations were. I don't truly know where I sit on it. I don't think he's a full blown sell either, but I know you could get a really good haul for him right now. So that's the only reason I was kind of the main reason I brought him up is I was like, oh, the Eagles have 2 first-round picks. You know what I mean? That's a similar situation. But I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. I truly don't know if I'm a sell. I think I'm somewhere kind of in the middle, possibly a hold, like what you were just saying, Brian. But yeah, I don't know for sure if he's a sell, but if you do sell him, you're going to get a decent amount for him.
Yeah, and I guess are you willing to give enough on top of Hurts to go after those elite tiers? Like, what does it take to get from Hurts to Joe Burrow?
Right.
Or Hurts to Dak might be not so bad. Like you may not have to throw much more at Hurts to go up to Dak. So if I was selling Hurts, I'd probably look to go that direction more than sell down. Like I don't really want to pivot down off of Hurts to a Tua. We were talking about him as a sell, but like a Hurts to I'm going to get one of those younger guys like a Lance or a Lawrence. Like I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, Hurts to Lamar, someone like that, I think would be a really solid try to maneuver like that.
I suppose.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't pay the extra to go to Burrow. I mean, I'd hold on Hurts before I went to Burrow because right now, in terms of value, he's the QB4, and I know Burrow's playoff run was just amazing, but I'm not totally on the train of QB4. I've seen him go as high as QB3 and or 4. I view him more as a QB6 or 7, but that's just personal preference to me.
Yeah, I've got him at QB6 as well. And I think I think that what we're seeing a lot is that, the top 3 are the tier of their own, Allen, Mahomes, and Herbert. And then who the QB4 is might differ. Like you might see a lot of leagues now where it is Burrow. You might still see somewhere it's Murray or Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Watson go 104 in a startup this year, so it could even be him. And you're probably right, Brian. Like it might even be cheaper to go after Lamar Jackson. Maybe the rushing, right? Okay, just someone may not want to go from Burrow, who they think, okay, I could give my quarterback for 10 years. I don't have to worry about it. I guess he did get injured and already tore his ACL one year, but like maybe there's less injury risk with Burrow somehow than there is with guys like Lamar and Kyler Murray. So maybe that actually adds to the cost. You're right, Brian. The cost it takes to get Burrow, you might almost just pay a little bit extra and go after Herbert or go after Mahomes, right? Like that. At that point, you might as well just go for the real big fish.
Oh, exactly. And the other thing I found as really interesting, with the Scott Fish poll last year, comment was made. Being new, I read the comment that basically, and I view Superflex the very same way, that you don't have to have 2 great quarterbacks to be successful. Try to get one of those top 3. Then after that, pick your favorite down to the second tier. It's okay. You can compete with just the one good quarterback and a decent quarterback or 2 as your QB2.
Because I actually had Herbert Hurts as my QB 1 and 2 in Scott Fish Bowl last year, and I didn't make the playoffs. So maybe the Herbert pick was the right one, and then I went Waller then Hurts. Maybe I could have maximized my 2nd and 3rd round picks better last year, and maybe that would have helped me get in the playoffs.
The other thing that was kind of interesting, we were talking about tight ends just a few minutes ago. The thing that amazes me about tight ends is most of your tight ends are 27 and older, even 29 and older. So it's kind of interesting in regards to that. Your trade market for trying to sell one of your older tight ends, to me, is to a team that's currently competing and or expects to compete this coming fall. Other than that, like a Kelsey or somebody, he would be somebody that I would be okay selling. As great as he is, somebody out there that's wanting to win this next year and feels they can, they're going to want to buy Kelsey. But for somebody that's not right there at the moment to win it all, trade Kelsey and get what you can.
Yeah, the tight end is something, because rarely they're going to develop well on your roster either. Like the tight end is something where if you're in a rebuild team, you probably want to wait until you're competing. And that's like the final piece. Okay, this team's going for it now. I'll trade for a tight end. Like that's kind of, people talk about that a lot with running backs as well. I think the running backs, though, is that those can be the catalyst to help you get to that competing spot, right? The young guys can come in and produce immediately. Don't really get that with the tight ends. Even generational Kyle Pitts scored 1 touchdown last year. It was the tight end 11 in points per game. Wasn't really helping you win games. Like he wasn't losing games for you, but he wasn't the difference-making winner. And I mean, he's still the tight end 1 in Dynasty, so that doesn't matter for his value. But the way we're talking about, is Joe Burrow a sell?
I was actually thinking that after we talked on him. Like, if you could, like we've already discussed, he's not going to give you the rushing upside that a lot of the other ones are. So But with him being currently valued as a borderline top 5 quarterback, even moving down to get Hurts, going from him to Hurts and a piece, I think is a great move, So I think he could potentially actually, I don't have him written down, but I think he's definitely on right there to where he's probably at his max value. I don't know if he's going to get much higher than QB5 with his current, not rushing or anything like that. But he has all the weapons. He's going to be consistent. And like you said, you got your quarterback locked in for the next 10 years. But, are you happy with, QB 6-7 production all the time? Or do you want, maybe the upside of if Hurts does take this step forward, he could actually leapfrog him in the rankings next year?
Yeah. And I think just at that, so I've kind of mentioned it, top 7 quarterback, and then, Burrow 6, Dak Prescott 7. If I've got one of those top 7, like maybe looking to sell, but it's also sell for specific deals. Like with other players, like you might not get you might not necessarily need a quarterback back selling to, or if you do, you get a backup quarterback that has a chance to compete for a job. Like you sneak it in that way where you're not really getting a starting quarterback, but you're getting another pick back, and the combination of the value makes it worth it. But with Burrow, I think it's very specific trades, and I think it's all the quarterbacks in that range. It's almost like you need one to join the trading club of that group. Like, so if I've got Joe Burrow on my team, I'm not selling him unless I get another one of those top 7 quarterbacks. So it's basically what we said about Hurts. I'll add to Burrow to go up and get Mahomes or Herbert or an Allen, right? But do those guys really want to go down to Burrow? Like, is it cost too much? Burrow to Jackson, Burrow to Murray. That might work. That might be the best for me to target because I'm so high on Lamar Jackson that I'd actually be willing, depending on the league settings. Like that might be one where a scoring setting, I might prefer Burrow in a league where it's, you get points per completion, for instance. Okay, then I prefer Burrow and Dak to Lamar and Murray. But if it's, 4 point per passing touchdown and there's no points per completion, then yeah, give me Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. So maybe I'm willing to add to Burrow to get one of those two. Or right. How much is the Dak manager willing to give me to get Burrow? That might even be the best deal because you're selling Burrow and you're still getting something back as opposed to adding to him. So if you have Burrow, that's it. That's the target. Sell him for Dak. That's my advice. And see, and I've got them 6 and 7 QB, like Burrow QB6, Dak at QB7 in Dynasty. So to me, the extra, you give me a 23 third, I'll probably be happy with it. Like the extra doesn't have to be much for me, but that's me personally.
Well, I'm glad y'all are talking about Burrow as a potential sale because I had him written down here, but I didn't have the nerve to bring him up. I was like, boy, these guys will think I'm the biggest idiot on the show, but again, I'm okay if I can get an extra piece for it.
Specific trades. Like I'm not gonna sell Burrow to get Tua. I'm not gonna sell Burrow to get a Kirk Cousins or a Stafford, right? Like it's got to be very specific trades, and the higher up you go, the more specific those trades have to get. And I think Burrow's kind of the example for that.
And that's again filling out process in regards to what people are wanting to pay for Burrow. So, like you said, there's only a few quarterbacks, and I don't know Lamar Jackson. I just don't know. I mean, the last 2 years have been injury prone, so it's like, what do you expect? So I don't know.
Do you sell Jackson for Burrow, right? Like it's kind of, again, like you could sell within that group, and in some leagues some might be higher than others, so that'd be fun to kind of play with if you've got one of those quarterbacks to, again, not stray too far away from that group, but maybe there is movement to be had within that group.
Exactly. Yeah,
I guess we're almost at 3/4 of the episode, but I'll add in one more quarterback because we're a quarterback centric show apparently because we're dealing with the NFL. Everything's about the quarterbacks in the NFL. Just kidding. The way the wide receivers got paid this year, you'd make it think that's the most important position. But,
right.
My sell, I kind of hinted at earlier, just saying the second year quarterbacks. And Brian, you kind of said it too. We've mentioned Mac Jones. Are they almost all a sell? Like I'd argue Trevor Lawrence is probably a sell because he had an atrocious rookie season. Like really, like I know Scott Connor did a bunch of efficiency metrics. He took all 32 starters and a bunch of different categories, touchdown rate, yards per attempt. And he had close to like 8 or 10 different categories. And then he just kind of ranked them all and did an aggregate ranking. And Lawrence was 32nd in that aggregate. And he was 32nd in a few of those categories. And it was bad. And like the quarterbacks, Sam Darnold comes to mind. Like Trevor Lawrence's rookie season looks a lot like Sam Darnold's rookie season. And he's never really shown that much. I think Lawrence probably definitely better in college than Darnold was. Darnold's still good enough to get the 3rd overall pick, although clearly that was a mistake by the Jets. But I argue Lawrence is a sell, but to me, the biggest sell from that group is Zach Wilson. Back to the Jets again, funny enough, because he's seen a price boost. And I think the only reason Zach Wilson wasn't 32nd is because Lawrence was so bad, but I think Zach Wilson was 31st on that list, or 30th. Like he was just as bad as Lawrence was last year. And I mean, the raw numbers are even worse, but because he didn't play the full season. So like if you look at just the total yards and stuff, that even the total touchdowns, Lawrence was atrocious, like 10 touchdowns, I think he threw. So somehow I think Wilson had less. And Wilson's gotten weapons, so there's kind of been an uptick in value. It's funny, Devin, I almost want to talk about this when you talk about Tua, but it's almost the same principle to me. He's gotten the more weapons. It's kind of elevated him to now he's a top 20 quarterback in dynasty value. And maybe Tua was already there, so it's less of an elevation. I think Zach Wilson's really got up there. So I think even though I've bought him in a league this year, salary cap contract league, maybe there's extra context there, kind of really desperately needing a quarterback, and was actually able to get a pick back with him. So it was a Chris Godwin straight up for Zach Wilson in the 3rd, and the cap hits are not very much different. I think it's $5 more for Wilson. So give me that. When I needed a quarterback, I only had Mahomes on my team. I needed the quarterback too. I don't mind selling Godwin when I've already got some good wide receiver depth. Cooper Kupp mostly. He's awesome to have. So yeah, I did buy Zach Wilson this year, but I also have him in another league where I'm looking to sell. Actually, Brian, you're in that league. It's the FBC Dynasty League. So I guess I can't really sell him to you. I just told you how much I don't like him. But,
exactly.
I do know someone who does want to buy him, so I think that might actually happen. So yeah, Zach Wilson would be my quarterback sell.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Like you said, he's got that. I don't know. I want to call it window shopping. They did a nice job in the draft, but until something's proven on the field, they're still the Jets to me. So.
Yeah, and a lot of these teams too, they're trying to get this solidified to know if it's their guy before the 5th year kicks in. There's such a jump in the money that's owed to the quarterback on the 5th year. Just look at Sam Darnold; it becomes fully guaranteed, and it was $20 million or something like that. So a lot of these teams now, they're not even trying to make the decision by the 5th year. They want to know before they have to guarantee that if they need to move on or not. So I think this is also – oh, go ahead.
If they're worth that much money to guarantee them the 5th year, you probably just want to sign them long-term, because if they're that good, you don't really want them getting a 5th year and having an even better season. That's going to cost even more. You'd almost that was maybe the thought we really saw it this year. Like no one jumped up to get Willis or Ritter at the end of the first, like we all expected. Mm-hmm. Teams might have almost viewed their 5th year as a hindrance, right? And like the Packers, I assume will decline Jordan Love's 5th year option. I think they have to do that before the season. And when you mentioned it, Brian, I'm a Packers fan, but my hope is that Jordan Love doesn't play the rest of his rookie contract. What we saw that one start with Kansas City and the very limited time he's played is enough that the Packers actually re-sign him as the backup super cheap, because no one else will want him because they think, he just sucks. So that's my hope with Jordan Love.
Doesn't he?
Oh, he does, but that's
my
why
Bears
he's going to
fan
be even
coming
cheaper.
Out. That's my Bears fan coming out. I couldn't resist.
No, he does.
but yeah, it's when they changed that rule, to where it had to be guaranteed. They used to be able to say they're picking up the option and then they could still get out of it. Within the last year or two, they actually switched that to where now you have to make the decision a year beforehand, and it's fully guaranteed for the next season. I think we've seen a lot of this now from, when they changed the rookie wage scale, when Stafford came into the league, got this massive contract. I mean, he ended up panning out, but teams were willing to just keep riding. So they invested so much money into these players that they were trying to give them as much rope as possible. Now, I mean, you're lucky if you get 2 full seasons as a starter to show what you can do. So I think that's kind of going to be how it is going forward. But I think Zach Wilson, like you said, he's right in that to where they've given him weapons. They brought in Conklin, some other pieces to help surround him with Corey Davis. And, like you said, they drafted Wilson as well. So, I mean, he's kind of in the same boat to where, they might bring in competition for him next year if he doesn't actually show that he's the guy.
All right, so now let's talk running backs. We haven't really addressed the position at all. So, Devin, do you have a running back sell?
But yeah, I have multiple. I'm just gonna go with the first one. I've been telling anyone and everyone over since the last year, Kamara is my number one running back sell at the moment. His value is still holding strong. He had that incident in Las Vegas to where he's maybe going to be suspended, probably pretty minimal, a game, maybe 2 or 3. But even besides that, before that whole incident happened, he was a sell for me. He's right there at the running back cliff. He's got Jameis Winston now. It's not back in the glory days where he had Drew Brees always dumping it off to him. Had a couple health issues last year. But anytime, really any running back, you can go through and see if they're 26, getting ready to be 27, I'm going to tell you to sell. So you can say that for a lot of guys across the league. He's one of those elite ones to where, you might be able to go down with the ship. But as of right now, the value that you're going to get for him next year, the year after, it's all going downhill from here. This is truly about the peak of what you can get out of him. It's probably already started to go down, if I'm being honest, compared to if you would have sold him last year, let's say. So yeah, he's my number one sell right now. I think he's got it's going to be hard for him to ever finish as a top 5 quarterback again, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, just thinking to last year,
running back.
He finished 2020 as the RB1. And I mean, depending on the scoring settings, maybe it was Derrick Henry, maybe it was another running back that I'm just about to mention here. But that would have been the time to sell, thinking that, this is RB1 year. It's probably never going to happen again. Right. The other guy that was, again, depending on the scoring setting, in a half-point PPR league, he might have been the RB1, was Dalvin Cook. And I think, Devin, it's that same draft class. It's that 2017 draft class. And for both Cook and Kamara, and you nailed it with Winston, right? It's the lack of dump-offs, lack of receptions. 47 catches, and he only played 13 games, but that's still a lot lower than what his normal target rate was. And some of those games were Taysom Hill, and some of those games were some really awful quarterbacks to where, the quality of passes were so bad he was better off just running, which you don't ever say. It probably isn't even true. Dalvin Cook kind of suffered the same fate, and 13 games, 34 catches. At least in 13 games, Kamara had 47 catches, 67 targets. But Cook, in those 13 games, had less catches than the year he tore his ACL. Not the rookie year where he got injured, but the second year where he had 40 catches that year. But one thing that really has changed the last 2 years for the Minnesota Vikings offense is Justin Jefferson. This offense no longer runs through Cook. This isn't the Dalvin Cook-led offense where it's a lot of heavy run game, play action, and a lot of times you're just dumping off to Cook anyway. That's so long. This is a downfield offense. It's going to be Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Cook's maybe going to get the rest. He's still going to get a ton of carries, but the efficiency of value, I think, has dropped completely for him because I don't think the targets are going to jump back up. He was never quite what Kamara was. Even his, even the years where he had 14 games, 63 targets, 54 targets, right? He's never gotten to 55 catches, and he's not even going to be able to probably hit that. He's a step lower than even that. So if he's around 30 to maybe 40 catches max next year, his chances of finishing as an RB1 really just hinges on touchdowns. And last year was a pretty awful touchdown year for him. How many? Yeah, 6. He had 6 touchdowns coming, and he had 17 the year before, 13 the year before that. So massive drop. That probably has room to touchdown regression says he probably gets more than 6 next year. He had 0 receiving touchdowns. As little catches as he caught, I'd still expect him to at least catch one touchdown pass. So the touchdowns do have a chance to go up, but I'm not sure that the receptions and the market share in the passing game do. So probably similar reasoning. 2017 backs who great workhorse, well, especially Cook workhorse, but for Kamara pass catcher that may not quite have those roles anymore. I think those are 2 great sells. Brian, I don't know if we stole any of your ideas, but what's your RB sell?
I got 2 I want to throw out, and once again, it's sometimes hard to value players. You have to look. For me, I look like trade calculators and stuff like that. But 2 guys that are at the very top that, I'm kind of uncertain about their market, but both McCaffrey and also Cam Akers are listed at the very top of some of the trade calculators. And I'm, especially with McCaffrey, in our league that you mentioned just a minute ago, I've been trying to push McCaffrey, and everybody seems to be a little uncertain. So maybe he's a guy that you have to wait for until after the first of the year in regards to a sale. But right now, depending upon what the market is, I would be okay selling him now. But I've tried several times in our league, and everybody's like, "Oh, I'm a little concerned about his injury." So I don't know if everybody feels that way, but he's still valued as one of the top 5, top 4 overall running backs. So.
I've already publicly declared I'm probably trading Zach Wilson, but I think I'll try and buy McCaffrey off you. So we'll try and work something out there, Brian, because I'd be more on the buy side, I think, of him relative to maybe guys like Kamara and Cook. Now, I think he's probably also well, he might not be that much more highly valued than them, right? So that may be why those other guys are sells.
Yeah, those injuries have really piled up the last couple of years that really affect his value, to where it's lower. If I'm a contending team and someone's looking to sell McCaffrey in the league I'm in, then he's a perfect buy for an actual all-in contending team right now. Good sell as well. You can still get a haul for him. He's right there on that cusp. Compared to at least he's 25. Like Kamara, Cook, they're going to be 27 before the season even starts. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well.
Well, and I'll put all my cards.
I would say.
Go ahead, Brian.
One thing I would say, it seems like right now, you're selling him at low. At least to me, you're selling McCaffrey at a lower value than he can be. I'm on the fence. I've never been a huge, despite that 1 year that he was just flat out awesome. I've never been a complete McCaffrey fan, but his sell price right now, even though the trade value charts say it's like way up through the roof, almost seems like you need to wait a game or two into the season, and then you might get peak value. I don't think he's at peak value right now.
It'll be interesting to see how they actually go forward using him. He's had some injuries, so I'm wondering if they're trying to back off a little bit because they signed Donta Foreman. They already drafted Chuba Hubbard last year, so there's I see Donta being more of a goal line back to where if they get close now, they might still have McCaffrey on the field where he catches maybe some outswing, some catching touchdowns. But I think if they get to the goal line, I think that Donta Foreman signing is a little bit underrated. As of right now, we'll see how, training camp and everything shakes out. But potentially, I think he's kind of the goal line guy. He's a pretty big back, had some pretty good success last year as well. So he's kind of one that it seems a little odd to me why they signed him. I mean, maybe they just needed the depth, but I think they actually have a plan for him.
Maybe. Although I will say, I feel like this might be anecdotal, but I feel like McCaffrey's gotten hurt on receptions. Hasn't always been like he's run and he's gotten hurt. Like I know the one time it was the season-ending shoulder injury that came on a reception. He was running after the catch and trying to dive for the first down. Yeah. Right. So I don't think them not running him and just throwing to him more necessarily means that there's less risk. But maybe you're right. I mean, I think the ideal thing would be they take away his carries between the 20s, but still give him the goal line stuff, right? So I think I'll lay my cards on the chest just to talk about if McCaffrey's a sell, what are you looking for? So like in that specific league where that Brian is referencing, I've got like 3 running backs that if Brian wanted to do the RB to RB swap, it'd be one of those 3. I don't know if I have any good enough receivers. You'd want to be those guys. So it'd be a couple of young guys and then someone who is, I guess, slightly younger than McCaffrey. You got Nick Chubb, but then also a couple of it's funny, we talk about that 2017 class, which includes Cook, McCaffrey, and Kamara. The next big class was 2020. I've got Swift and Dobbins. So the way I kind of see the value, like, I don't know how you guys feel, but I would value Swift ahead of McCaffrey. So if Brian, for instance, 100%. Wanted to buy Swift off me, he'd have to add to McCaffrey to get Swift. And I think based on what you're saying, Brian, you're definitely not interested in that. Like you want to tier down from McCaffrey and get something added on top of whatever player you're getting and not add to McCaffrey, but get a package for McCaffrey.
That's what I've been trying to do. And I'm kind of surprised. I mean, we're dealing with, since we're holding our rookie draft a little later, we're dealing with 2022 our current draft class. And I'm kind of surprised that somebody's not willing to throw a late first or early second to, I don't know, like one offer was like to Emanuel Sanders. And I think there's still a huge gap between McCaffrey and Sanders. So I was kind of surprised.
That's an instant reject.
Even like I was gonna say, Sanders in the late first. I don't think I'd sell McCaffrey for that. So that's just be a different running back outright as opposed to the picks.
Yeah, at that point, because you're late first, there's not going to be a running back there at that
Sanders
point. Sanders
in a 23 first, that's maybe in the realm.
Right.
So, like in our specific example, I'd probably have better chance. I'm probably too high on Nick Chubb to where, like, that's pretty close to me. Like, I don't know how do you feel about like who you have higher between Chubb and McCaffrey? If I go back to my rankings, I think I have Chubb at either 4 or 5 and McCaffrey at 6. So, like, that's another one where I wouldn't want to add to Chubb to get McCaffrey personally.
Oh, I agree. To me, that's a straight up 1-for-1 trade.
So then it's probably Dobbins. And that's kind of my thought is Dobbins, the same fear with Cook and Kamara is there with Dobbins, only he's never been a pass catcher and he probably never will be. So that's one where I'm probably willing, even though he's younger, I'm probably willing to add to Dobbins to get McCaffrey. So that might be the best way for us to go about that, Brian. So then it's just figuring out what is that extra, like what is that in between, and we'll negotiate that, and maybe we'll report back and see if we were able to get a trade. But that was my thinking too. Was if I was going to get McCaffrey off Brian, because I know you've mentioned that before you were willing to sell him. My thinking was I probably need to sell Dobbins and add something to Dobbins as opposed to expect to get something back on top to give up Chubb or to give up Swift. So yeah,
that's where I'm at as well. Like I said, I value Swift. And maybe I'm wrong. I kind of value Swift, then Chubb, then a decent distance down to Dobbins. But that's
how I have it too. I think I've got, like I said, I've got Swift at RB3, Chubb at RB5, and Dobbins like RB17. So again, I'm laying my cards on the chest. There's kind of a gap. So then it's to figure out what is that gap to get from Dobbins to McCaffrey.
He froze
Brian's flabbergasted. He can't believe it. So he's
right?
I'm going to steal Dobbins off Kyle here.
Yeah, I think another one, another running back I wanted to mention too. I actually just went through this on a team I inherited. Is Ezekiel Elliott. I think he's also very much in that same. I think he was maybe the 2016 class. Not 2017.
Him and Henry were that year before 2017.
But he's got a lot of miles on him. He's already kind of shown that he's not staying as healthy as much. He's taken a lot more splits with him and Pollard. So I actually just inherited a team and had him on there, and I tried trading him as much as I could, and there wasn't a lot of bites out there, so it's not a very easy sell. If you have a Cowboy homer in your league, maybe that'll make things a little bit better. I actually ended up trading him for mine for Elijah Mitchell and the two running backs, the one they just drafted and the other one that they had from last year from Ohio State.
Not Hasty? You didn't get Hasty out of that?
I didn't get Hasty, no. So
there you go. Would have won the deal.
I got three running backs for one, but
to go to Elijah Mitchell just for the age is that's a good pivot to go from Zeke to Mitchell.
I figured, I think they're going to maybe have similar production. We'll kind of see what happens this year. I don't really expect. Elijah definitely has more upside, I think, at this point. Zeke last year. I can see
Zeke because he catches passes having in the right matchup having better weekly upside than Mitchell does.
Agreed.
So that'll be in season that distinction more than. But if you're looking at looking back overall season, you're probably right. They might finish close to one another.
Which he's always sneaky. Like he had another top 10, finish last year. But like I said, it's he's got I think 1,500 carries now in the NFL, and that's on top of what he had in college. And he's about to be 27 as well. All the factors are there where it's the writing's on the wall that this might be the last true year of him giving you pretty solid numbers. So he was one that I actually had experience with that I just sold. So I figured I would bring that one up as well.
I know.
Yeah, I missed the beginning, but with just bullet points alone, I know we're talking about Ezekiel Elliott. So
yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I tried to hit that in there with the draft when you came in to make that transition smooth. But
if you do want to keep Elliott too, if you still think, okay, he's got enough to get me in the tank, just make sure you go get Pollard. You know what I mean? So I think he's a lot easier to buy. He's probably easier to buy Pollard than it is to sell Zeke for what you actually want to get out of Zeke.
That's a good point.
So that's the only thing, if you can't sell them, pivot and just double down on that backfield, and then you got one of them healthy.
If you're forced into making the bet that Zeke goes through the year healthy and produces, then make the bet, right? And okay, well,
Right.
if for Zeke to do that, what else has to kind of go in line and make other trades to go with that? I almost wonder, though. I'd almost think the opposite. If I've got Zeke, I want to avoid Pollard because now I'm betting on Zeke goes through the whole season healthy. That I like. Pollard has no handcuff value. He's just got his own whatever his role is that he plays as a pass catcher, which does maybe cap Zeke a little bit, but it's also kind of saying that, you'd almost have to like bank on Zeke being healthy all the games. And then are you ever playing Zeke and Pollard the same week?
Right.
I think Pollard's still got value as a flex play. And because a lot of these sleeper leagues are pretty deep. So I still think he can give you 10 to 12 points, even playing the backup role.
And so it's funny because I think there's certain moves that I think you can justify. Like if you can justify for that reason, okay, I can play them this way and it's not going to impede the rest of my roster, then it's okay to have. I always say, going for the 2 tight end strategy, I'm going to go with Andrews and Kittle. I've actually got a couple teams where I have Andrews and Kittle, but it's start 2 tight ends minimum and there's tight end premium. So you can even flex them realistically with multiple flex spots. Those are the leagues where I want to do it where, or it's a hyper flex with tight end premium. You start 1 at each position and there's 6 flex spots. And because of the tight end premium, the elite guys, like you'd rather have them over wide receivers in the flex spots. I've got one where I think that's another Kittle, Andrews, and Darren Waller league where I've got all 3, knowing I can play all 3 every week. And I still have 4. Well, I'll use one as a super flex. I still have 3 other flex spots to play with. The leagues where I don't want to have 2 tight ends ever is when you only have 1 flex spot or even only 2, because then like, especially if you only have 1 flex spot and you're literally saying I'm using it on this other tight end to go this 2 tight end build to take it away from other people, then you suddenly have no flexibility. So number of flex spots might impact the tight end strategy, as kind of me as a natural look at it, okay, if I'm going to approach tight ends this way, I always look how many flex spots, what is the flex usability with tight ends? And if not, then I really just want the one guy. And then I'll, if he goes down, then my team's probably messed up anyway, or I can trade for another elite guy. I don't really want to like handcuff there. So I guess in a similar process with Zeke and Pollard, if you've got enough flex spots to where you can start both, then it probably is the league where it makes more sense to handcuff. But if you're in shallow rosters, start 8, I probably don't want to handcuff Pollard to Zeke. I want Alexander Madison with Zeke. And that way, if Cook goes down, I have extra leverage. And I'm banking on the highest outcomes every time. I'm always chasing the ceiling and ignoring the safety. And if I fail, especially in Dynasty, okay, then take me to the bottom and give me the 101. And next year's class, that might be a little better than this year's class. So,
and that's the thing. There's so many different formats and settings, and a lot of people don't always think about them. But I always, before you draft, please double check the settings, because each setting's different. And the unfortunate thing is, can you predict what the points outcome will be? Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, that's why there's a random chance. But at the same time, just keep the settings in mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think informed decisions. I know one of my big things this rookie draft season was after Breece Hall, draft to what your league settings are. If this is a start 12 PPR league, so there's like 5 flex spots, and you can just hammer wide receiver. Like you can just throw a bunch of wide receivers in. Then that's the type of league where you maybe don't want to take Kenneth Walker 102. If it's start 8 and there's only like 1 or 2 flex spots, okay, if I can overload the running back position, I can maybe have the better leverage. That's maybe where you want to go Kenneth Walker 102. I took Kenny Pickett 106 in a league where we can start up to 3 quarterbacks every week. I didn't want to touch him in any other rookie drafts though. So it's all to the settings can inform the strategy of a specific league as well.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're almost at an hour 10, so maybe end out here with any wide receiver sells. I really didn't have one, so I almost got bailed out by the time. I know Brian already mentioned Tyreek Hill. So Devin, do you had any wide receiver sells you wanted to mention? Because honestly, Tyreek Hill was probably going to be mine. So
yeah, I had Tyreek written down. A couple others that I had was Tyler Lockett and Chris Godwin. I think Godwin right now he's not going to be back until maybe November, late in the season. And then beyond this season, he signed that extension. We don't know what's going to happen with the Buccaneers and their quarterback position. So I think there's a lot of risk there. I think his value right now, he still has it. So I think he can give you a decent haul back. And then Tyler Lockett, like I said, it's quarterback situation there is bad. He's on the wrong side of 30 now. He's always been a real streaky player to where, he'll have those real big games. And then, even with the bad quarterback play, he still had that last year as well. But, just seeing the situation he's in, I don't know if he's really – it's probably all downhill from here for him, And I guess another one just to get out there too, just at his current draft position is Gabriel Davis. I like the player. I don't know if I'm not very high on selling him, but just for the fact that earlier I looked and he's ahead of Bateman and stuff like that, a wide receiver 22. Seems like, his value is very high and you can get a huge haul for him with very little on-field production that's actually been shown. I mean, you can say that, he's got Josh Allen. He's perceivably the number 2 option there. I like the kid. I actually have him in a couple leagues. But if you need to get some, extra pieces onto your team, he can get you some good pieces.
Well, I mean, I guess I already mentioned I sold Chris Godwin for another sell, Zach Wilson. So I guess it's fine if Godwin's also a sell, then it works out. I actually bought Gabe Davis this offseason. Wide receiver 22. That's ridiculous even for me. I think I had him ranked at wide receiver 30, 31, 32, somewhere in there. And I thought and that seemed like I was high. That was higher than the consensus anyway. So if you're even higher than that, I would definitely rather have Bateman, I think.
I have him at wide receiver 36. So, I mean, to get that kind of value at wide receiver 22 right now is just, I mean, that's, like I said, he's young. He's got the situation. It's all there, but I think he's being overvalued quite a bit right now.
4 touchdown games will do that to you, surprisingly. Right? But yeah, I totally agree.
Right.
But the one thing I'll say about Davis, though, is that I don't know that anyone really overreacted to the 4 touchdown game. I know everyone, you first saw the tweets, everyone was joking. Okay, Gabe Davis over Jamar Chase, right? But no one, I don't think anyone was really seriously kind of valuing him at that range initially. And I think it was the fear of the draft. I think maybe since the draft and drafting Khalil Shakir, was that a 5th round pick? I think he was
5th or 6th. I think I can't remember. I know they traded with the Bears. I think it was a 6th round pick because we only had 1/5 at the time.
Yeah, we definitely talked about that on here on the Dynasty Gambit live show. I think it was the 5th. I thought it was early 5th, but they brought in Jamison Crowder as well, but not too much competition to where, I mean, best guess he's probably number 2 on the team in targets, right? And
I would anticipate it, but prior to that game, wouldn't y'all consider him more like a wide receiver 3, low end, and now he's more like high end wide receiver 3, or maybe even low end wide receiver 2?
That's
seems fair.
It's and like you said, they got rid of Beasley. They only brought in the 5th round pick with Shakir, like you said. So
I think even more important, no Emanuel Sanders, because he seems like he was the one that really got in Davis's way last year.
Yeah. So, I mean, the opportunity's there for him. It's just me personally. If I can get someone to pay me wide receiver 22 value for him, I'm probably going to take it. No, it's just depending on team makeup. I mean, that's always going to be the main, caveat there, if you will. But, those were just some of the ones I had written down.
My last one to throw in, Michael Pitman. I mean, a lot of people love him, but I don't know what does the quarterback situation look like for the next few years. So I could be off of Pitman.
That'll be a fun guessing game. Who's next year's week 1 starter for Indianapolis? And how many years before they actually get the same guy 2 years in a row, right? Maybe Matt Ryan's finally.
This is the 5th year in a row, I think, that they've had a one, because they had
it might even be more than that, honestly.
Yeah.
So if we go back, so obviously you've got, Ryan this year, Wentz last year, Phillip Rivers the year before. And the year before that, I think it would have been Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah.
And then Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
And then the year before that, Luck missed the whole year. So I think it was Scott Tolzien. And then Andrew Luck. And then it was Andrew Luck for a few years in a row. But that's 7 straight years where you've had a different week 1 starter. And 2 of those years is Luck, but not 2 of the same, not 2 consecutive. So maybe Matt Ryan is eventually the guy to break that curse, but we're gonna have to find that next year. We thought last year Carson Wentz might be the guy, so tune in next year to see if we're right about that. But I think Pitman makes sense, Brian, in that it just probably the production. It's almost like what I was saying with quarterbacks earlier. You get to a certain point at the wide receiver, and then the top 8 or 9 might really be difference maker, and then from there it's just a flat tier that you can almost ride down all the way to the wide receiver 3s, like to almost a Gabe Davis. Maybe not quite that low, but like I'm trying to think like who would be a good example there.
To like pivot down from Pitman.
Yeah, is Pitman to Bateman, maybe Pitman to Devontae Smith.
I would do that. Yeah, I mean, those are all pivot downs. I don't like this. I like the Bateman one a little bit more than I would say the Smith one, but that's still an example of what it would take, probably to pivot down a little bit.
Or how about this one? Pivot to an older player, Michael Pittman to Mike Evans. Who has to add on that side?
Man, it's really close, honestly.
Someone who's won with Mike Evans on their team might insist on the payment of they don't want to depart with him unless they're getting paid. But if you have someone who's maybe worried about his age, they might be willing to add from Mike Evans onto Pittman. The time to do this trade might have almost been before Tom Brady unretired, right? Like we weren't sure who Mike Evans quarterback was going to be. Maybe it's a little bit difficult now, but that might be something to.
You can say maybe McLaurin somewhere in there too. He's kind of a similar situation. You know what I mean? If you're looking to move down off of Pittman.
I was almost thinking you were saying the opposite. Like McLaurin is similar to Pittman in that he's a sell in the same sense.
No, I'm saying if you're trying to move down from Pittman, you could probably get McLaurin plus something.
That's probably true.
Just a little bit. It's pretty close in terms of some trade value charts.
I think Evans is actually in for a really good year this year. I mean, he's got the clear cut. Godwin's not there. Still don't know if Gronk's coming back yet, which I mean, it's assumed he is, but who knows? So I mean, Brady's going to feed him this year, I'm pretty sure. So like in redraft, I'm targeting him a lot, actually. I haven't done any
Tyreek Hill to get
leagues,
Mike Evans. Even add to Tyreek Hill to get Mike Evans. Do it like a 2-3 swap. Like, give up Hill and a second to get Mike Evans in the third. Is that still too much?
I think that's given. I wouldn't want to give up a second if I had Hill. I feel like you're moving down to get Evans. Like I like him a lot this year, but
you'd rather do that for like a Cooper Kupp. Like if you're give me the wide receiver one.
Yep.
Okay. In a sense, normally like whoever was the wide receiver one last year should be a sell. Now in Dynasty, Cooper Kupp's not going as the wide receiver one. Whereas Michael Thomas's wide receiver 1 year, he would have been the number 1 wide receiver in startups, which made him the perfect sell. So traditionally, Kupp should be a sell, but maybe dynasty managers are almost getting smarter, or maybe that's just the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson effect. So while in theory Kupp should be a sell, he might not be. He might almost be a buy, especially the new contract he just signed. And it seems like his game is the type of game we like. It's not based on overall quick speed, but I even think it's more important because Usain Bolt was still the fastest guy, and he's probably still the fastest guy in the world now. If you're fast, you're going to be fast no matter how old you are. I worry more about the big body contested catch guys personally, but Cooper Kupp's not either of those things. He's technician, route runner, knows how to get open, great hands, great after the catch. Those are all things that can kind of age well. So Kupp might be actually a buy. We're not supposed to talk about buys in this episode, but I want to add in one name, and it's funny because you mentioned Godwin. It made me think of him, but then I forgot about him. And then you mentioned Michael Pittman, and it made me think of the name Michael Gallup for almost the same reasons as Chris Godwin, just the late injury. And now it seems like he's got that 5-year extension, and Dak's also there. So unlike Godwin, there's the long-term stability with the quarterback, but that might be one where he might not see a massive target share like he did the 1 year where it was just him and Amari Cooper, where they both had 115 targets, I think it was. That Michael Gallup might be of the past, and we don't know how he recovers. And again, who knows how much production is this year. So especially as contending teams, to get out from that before we really know, okay, it's going to be a while. Like maybe people still don't realize the magnitude of how much time he might miss. So maybe sell off of that as well in a similar vein to Chris Godwin. Maybe not to the same value you're getting Chris Godwin. Godwin's shown, he was the wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. And well, I'm saying that anecdotally, but I remember a draft that was that same year, Michael Thomas. So I guess it would have been so just before 2020. So 2020 season, I definitely remember being in a draft where Godwin was the wide receiver 2 in the draft, ahead of Devontae Adams. So like we've seen him with that ceiling, that extra value. Gallup isn't quite there, so I don't think would command the same price necessarily as Chris Godwin. Like it might not, like I sold Godwin and got a quarterback out of it. You might not be able to get like even a Zach Wilson type quarterback by selling Gallup. Like you can buy Mariota, maybe. I don't know.
I actually just sold Gallup in a league that I've been doing about a 2-year rebuild now on. It was in abysmal shape. But I sold him during our draft for Allen Robinson and the 207, I believe is what it was.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that one. That's
I know Robinson had a bad year last year, but I'm definitely Robinson over Gallup. He's someone who would be in that like the kind of range we were talking about, like where Gabe Davis is. Like, is he top 30 or is he just outside the top 30? Like right in that flux range. I think Robinson's definitely there. Gallup a lot lower for me. So that's a crazy value. That's a great trade, dude. Like
yeah, right. I thought so too. I
might be willing to give up Gallup in the 207 just to get Robinson.
Yeah, I probably would too. Honestly, that's the Allen Robinson one. Everyone kind of thinks he's like older than what he is. He's been in the league forever, but he's actually younger than Cup.
He's 28, I believe, and
he's like
he was young coming into that 2014.
class. He's like 3, and Cup was old coming out of his, coming out. Yeah. And so he's like 3 months younger than Cup, and I don't think a lot of
even though he came into the league 2 years earlier. Wow.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, if you would ask who's older, and they're going to say Allen Robinson, and he's actually not. If we go over our bye episodes, he's probably going to make an appearance as long as he stays healthy.
No,
I don't see any reason why Robinson can't slide into at least OBJ numbers the last half of the season. So.
Yeah, because on that team, Robert Woods had a pretty solid season going. He wasn't scoring touchdowns, but he was still getting decent targets at the beginning before he got hurt. And then when OBJ came in, he picked up right where Woods had left off, basically.
And so, Jefferson's got his, he's going to catch deep balls. There's a week or two where he's going to outscore Robinson,
right?
And it's going to be massive numbers. But outside of that, like you'd still probably rather have Robinson, getting a lot. Like I think the Rams would rather Robinson get a ton of targets than Higbee or Van Jefferson or anyone else they have.
Yeah, and he offers something different than what Cup does too. He's going to be a really good goal line asset. He's a very good route runner. Cup is a very good route runner, but like Allen Robinson's going to give you more of those contested catches. He can get you like the possession type catches as well. So, I think that was a perfect lane. As much as I wanted him to stay with the Bears, I don't think I can blame him for going to that situation.
It's funny. It's going to be because McVay's system is based on I'm designed to get these guys open. But what happens if the guys can't get open? Robinson can still make the plays. It's kind of almost a safety blanket for Stafford. And Stafford's the kind of guy that he can throw guys open. He knows how to throw guys contested catch situations. He doesn't care if Calvin Johnson's triple covered. He can just jump over them. I'll just throw it.
Oh, yeah. So, and that's, it's such an underrated, like the leap he's going now to playing with Stafford. I don't think you can over-exaggerate how much of an improvement this is over any quarterback he's ever played with in the NFL. You're talking Stafford's up here, and then Trubisky, Bortles, all these guys, there's a huge gap down here. All the way down there. So I think he's in for a really good year.
Yeah, as much as I hate to I don't want to knock the Bears because of you, Devin, but when was the last good quarterback the Bears had? So
never. Jay Cutler, I think, is probably if you look at the
only
numbers,
they let Doug Flutie develop.
It's hard pressed to find another franchise that's had as bad of luck with the quarterbacks that the Bears have. It's sad at this point.
Cleveland?
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's probably on par.
You can feel good because you're not the Cleveland Browns.
Right? Yeah. Thank God we're not in that mess.
Even the Pucky QB wasn't that great of a quarterback, being honest.
No, he really wasn't. That's what I'm saying. Cutler is probably our best quarterback. And like he had a couple decent seasons, but he never panned out to where
I have belief that within 5 years we're going to be like, unquestioned, Justin Fields the greatest quarterback that's ever played for the Bears. That's going to happen.
I think so too. I'm pretty high on Fields, but we'll see. I'm trying to keep it reined in, but yeah.
Darnell Mooney season. All right. I think we'll rein in this episode here. And this was the Dynasty Gambit. Hopefully we sold you some good advice. I don't know if you're buying what we're selling, but went through a lot of different players, a lot of different positions. Just kind of, again, this is the time of year where if you can sell any of those guys straight up for picks, that's great. If you sell those players, and I guess we did talk a lot about transferring to different players to pivot down to, because knowing that this is the best time of year to transfer players into picks, probably everyone knows that. So not everyone's willing to do that. They want to save their picks either in season and again, I think the idea of, if you're a contender, acquiring picks is great because you can trade in season when you're about to make a playoff push, especially if your league doesn't have trade deadlines and you make it to the championship week. You can trade to add that extra piece in your lineup, knowing that, okay, this is literally a 1 week game. What can I do to add 1 week? So, if you save your picks to even the playoffs, you can maybe get an edge. So as contenders, it's nice to get picks. And of course, for rebuilding, you want those picks next year. And maybe next year you can use those picks to sell to buy young receivers in the offseason, as opposed to try and make every rookie draft pick as well. But yeah, this is a great sell episode. So thanks again, Devin, for the suggestion. Really good topic.
Yeah, it was a good topic.
Yeah, definitely enjoyed it.
All right, so clean up with the housekeeping stuff at the end. So again, Going for Two Live network is everywhere on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter. Also on YouTube at Going for Two, on the Twitter account, I should say, is at Going for Two Live. To look us up on Twitter, on YouTube. Well, and I'm mixing them all up. I'm selling all the words here. I'm selling out. But yeah, on YouTube at Going for Two Live, as I mentioned. I said it wrong again. I'm not even going to bother. Sorry, Jeff. Goingfor2.com. There you go. I know how to say a website properly. But maybe you guys could say your Twitter handles and save me from this.
You can always reach me at VandyGrad92. Definitely have a lot of content going on, and I look forward to more as we progress through June. So, like I said, any questions, always feel free to reach me at VandyGrad92.
Yep, mine's just at Devin Deal. So hit me up anytime you guys want to talk.
Just a good host, I should say. Brian, go first. Devin, go first. No, I'm just panic sell. Panic sell. Don't panic sell. That's the one thing in Dynasty. You don't really want to panic sell super low on a guy. I'm trying to think of an example right now. Don't panic sell Tannehill necessarily, just because AJ Brown's gone, right? That'd be my one where I think his value's dropped so low to where if you sold him at his current value, it's still a quarterback in Superflex that's been pretty efficient throughout his, especially this tenure with this team last few years. So don't panic sell, don't do that. But definitely subscribe to Going for Two. Again, on Twitter at Going for Two Live or Going4_2. And I'll give you everything with more of the articles and less with the live shows, but still tweeting all those out. But if you want all the great articles, the Going for Two website, again, CFL, DFS article. And I mean, 1 game's tonight. There's still 3 games the rest of the weekend. So even if you miss tonight's games, you can still maybe use that article to help with showdown lineups or other things of that nature. And I guess we'll be back in 2 weeks. I know there's a topic brought up, suggested, and I not to make a mockery of it, but we'll I thought it was a smart idea, so I wouldn't mock the person who came up with that idea for sure. But I know I will be hosting the next episode of Press Coverage, which will be Monday. Where's my calendar? May 13th. I know it's a Monday. I just don't know what date. Monday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Travis May's coming on. That'll be, I think, a really great interview. I know he's a great fantasy analyst, a super nice guy. I've listened to his podcast before, so it'd be nice to interact with him, talk with him, and ask a lot of great questions. So looking forward to that. Try to think, is there something on tomorrow night? I know last week it was the hot route. Was last week bet on it? I can't remember. Or no, I think Bo might have moved the hot route to Saturdays. I can't remember, but check out Going for Two Live. There's usually every day of the week. There's usually something coming on. Even if I can't keep track of which show, I'll always check out every Wednesday. Jeff will be on with the Armchair Fantasy Show, host with Foss. But 2 Thursdays from now, I'll be back with my co-hosts Brian and Devin. And this is, again, Kyle Senra at Senra Says on Twitter. And really great talking with you guys. So thanks for joining me again. And, of course, the viewers and listeners, thanks. But, Brian, Devin, thanks for joining again.
Yep.
Thanks for having us. I'll have a nice weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Nice weekend and, a couple weeks. And, again, this was the Dynasty Gambit.